Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. After Claire Newman decides she's had enough of her grandfather disparaging Kyle Abbott and trying to end their relationship, she will storm out on Victor Newman, according to the Young and the Restless synopsis from Monday, August 4th. Claire will demand that Kyle meet up with her family prior to Cole Howard's memorial service, even though she is aware that Victor won't be pleased. Kyle will make an effort to maintain the conversation on Cole's memories, but Victor will ignore him and leave Claire annoyed. According to YNR teasers, Adam Newman will be subjected to Victor's lecture because he failed to publish the Billy Abbott hit pieces. Nick Newman will caution that his brother cannot play both sides when it comes to their father, since Victor will make it apparent that he still wants Billy to be publicly humiliated. Chelsea Lawson will run into Lily Winters at Crimson Lights and offer her sympathies for Damian Kane. Lily will discover that Kane Ashby lied about their being stranded because there was a way to get out of his nice estate when Chelsea brings up his recent trip to Genoa City. Lily will soon leave the twins a voice message in their group chat, encouraging them to talk to their father, since they are unaware that Kane is Aristotle Dumas. Chelsea will then attend Cole's memorial alongside Adam, Claire, Kyle, Nick, Victor, Nikki Newman, and Victoria Newman. Everyone will return to the ranch after the service. Victor will suggest a toast and highlight Cole's eventual acceptance into the Newman clan. Claire will realize Victor is referring to Kyle when he cites numerous others who have tried and failed, and she will become irate. Although Victor will point out that he failed to mention Kyle's name, Claire will counter that she is not stupid and will grow tired of him disparaging Kyle all the time. Naturally, Victor won't say sorry for acting in his family's best interests. Claire will contend that Victor no longer has the authority to choose who is in her life and that she ought to have taken this action weeks earlier. Claire will stomp out with Kyle close behind after declaring she is done with Victor's attempts to end their relationship. Kane will greet Phyllis Summers in a suite at the GCAC and inform her that he is just staying there briefly. Kane will explain that after his American train gets to town, he will be living on it because he has an identical train on every continent. Kane will let Billy in after mentioning that there would be another person attending the meeting. Kane will eventually stress that he needs a team that gets along after Phyllis and Billy argue in front of him. Kane will question Billy's capacity for handling it once he explains his plan and acknowledges that pursuing Jabot is a component of it. After he incorporates all of the major GC companies, Kane will also offer Abbott Communications a place in his new, powerful enterprise. Billy will require some time to reflect, but Phyllis will pretend to be more reliable and insist that she is all in at this moment. Billy will believe that Kane is either insane or has a secret weapon because his ambitious intentions don't appear feasible. Kane will eventually get Billy to come along and find out. Stay in for updates on any significant news that may be in the works, as spoilers for The Young and the Restless indicate that Billy will have to make a difficult decision that may involve a significant betrayal of the family. Claire was at the end of her rope. She had put up with Victor's constant attacks on Kyle for months, listening to her grandfather spew hateful remarks about the guy she loved. She had initially attempted to reason with him, telling him that Kyle wasn't the bad guy Victor had painted him as. She had hoped that eventually Victor would notice Kyle's generosity, his support of her goals, and his ability to stick by her side no matter what. However, Victor's resentment was too strong and his grudges were too deeply entrenched. Whatever Kyle did, whether it was supporting Claire's work, attending family gatherings, or even making an extra effort to be kind to Victor himself, it was never enough. As though Kyle's very presence were an affront to the Newman heritage, Victor perverted every gesture and every word into something evil. For too long, Claire had suppressed her annoyance out of loyalty to her family, but tonight, something inside of her gave out. Like so many others, the dispute had begun with Victor launching into another of his speeches about Kyle's alleged manipulations while swirling a glass of whiskey in his favorite armchair. With a tone full of contempt, Victor had declared, "He's using you, Claire. That boy loves what you stand for, not you." A link to wealth, power, and this family. Claire had tightened her fists, her nails cutting into her palms as she struggled to maintain her composure. Believe me, the moment he gets what he wants, he'll drop you without a second thought. Every time she heard this same charge, it pierced her a bit more deeply, not because she thought it was true, but rather because she found it hard to comprehend how her own grandfather could be so vicious and intent to ruin her happiness. Claire had responded, her voice shaking with repressed rage, "You don't know him. You haven't even made an effort to get to know him." Victor sneered, taking a leisurely sip of his drink before giving her an enragedly patronizing look. "Kyle has done nothing but prove himself, again and again, and you refuse to see it because you're too stuck in your own prejudices," Victor said. "Claire, you're young. Uninformed. Men like Kyle are smooth talkers who know just what to say to get what they want. I've seen them 1,000 times." But at that point, Claire had had enough and refused to watch him take advantage of her. The term naive kept repeating in her head, making her heart race. She was a lady who had worked for what she had, made her own decisions, and knew her own heart. She was not some defenseless child being misled. She had said, "You don't get to decide who I love," as her voice rose. "You no longer have the authority to control my life. Years have passed while I've tried to win your acceptance and make you proud, but it's never enough." Victor's countenance had hardened, and his hand had tightened over his glass. "And now you want to destroy the one good thing in my life because you can't stand the idea of me being happy without your permission." He'd hissed, "I'm trying to protect you." Claire had laughed sourly, "But you're too stubborn to see it." "Keep me safe? Do you call this that? Because, as far as I can see, all you've done is repeatedly bring me down. Controlling or stifling the people you care about is not a way to protect them. You keep kids safe by believing in them and standing by them, even if you disagree with their decisions." Silence had descended upon the room, the strain oppressive. Victor's eyes flashed with something between fury and remorse, or even impatience, and his jaw had stiffened. Claire, however, had had enough of waiting for an unattainable apology. With her heart racing in her chest, she had pivoted on her heel and walked confidently to the door. "Where do you believe you're headed?" Victor's voice was stern as he ordered. Claire hadn't paused or even turned around. She had thrown over her shoulder, "Away from you. I've had enough of you disparaging the man I care about. You don't deserve to be in my life if you can't respect my decisions." The final punctuation mark at the end of a statement she should have penned long ago had been the door slamming behind her. She stepped outdoors, breathing in short, irate gasps, the cool night air hitting her face. She had anticipated feeling guilty, perhaps even depressed, but instead she felt relief, a burden that had been on her shoulders for too long. She had gone to great lengths to win Victor's approval and earn the Newman name, but she was done. So be it, if loving Kyle meant losing Victor's favor. Instead of kneeling at the altar of his ego, she would prefer to stand by herself with integrity. Claire had come to the realization that this was more than just Kyle as she got into her car, hands trembling on the steering wheel. This concerned herself, her desired life, and the person she wished to become. She had always been Victor's pawn in his never-ending games of dominance and power, an extension of himself. But she was so much more than that. She had learned from Kyle what it meant to be loved without conditions and to be appreciated for who she was rather than what she could do. Victor had no place in her future if he was unable to comprehend that. Her mind was spinning with 1,000 ideas and feelings, and the drive home had been a blur. A part of her questioned whether she should have tried to reason with him again or if she had been too harsh. She knew in her heart, however, that it would not have mattered. Victor's animosity toward Kyle sprang from something worse, something Claire was unable to change, rather than from reason or reality. She was also exhausted from trying, so exhausted. After seeing her face for the first time, Kyle knew something was off when she eventually entered her apartment. What took place? His hands were going for hers as he requested in a soft voice. Claire had uttered a trembling breath, the night suddenly weighing down on her. "I'm finished," she had muttered. "I've had enough of him." She buried her face in Kyle's chest as he drew her into his arms and held her there fiercely. "You don't need to give an explanation," he had whispered. "I've got you." Claire realized she had made the proper decision at that very moment. Victor had been attempting to sever their relationship for years, but he had been unsuccessful. His brutality had, if anything, strengthened their bond and increased Claire's conviction that she loved Kyle. No one, not even her grandfather, could control her happiness any longer. Clarity was all that remained once the tempest inside of her had finally subsided and the waves of grief and rage had subsided. She was done playing games, manipulating others, and giving up her happiness for a man who would never really see her. Claire was going to live her life as she saw fit from now on. Victor would have to learn to live without her if he couldn't accept it. In The Young and the Restless, family strife erupts when Claire finally confronts Victor's unrelenting criticism of Kyle. Claire makes it apparent in a dramatic confrontation that she has had enough of the Newman patriarch's harsh criticism by storming out in a moment of power that has the potential to permanently alter the dynamics of the Newman-Abbott dispute. Victor has been openly expressing his contempt for Kyle for weeks, casting doubt on his devotion, business judgment, and even familial status. Victor's criticism has been a recurring cause of contention, straining relationships and causing a breach between the Abbotts and the Newmans despite Kyle's attempts to prove himself. However, Claire, who has become close to Kyle, will no longer tolerate Victor tearing him down. Claire confronts Victor in a dramatic moment, exposing his deceptive tactics and unrelenting prejudice toward Kyle. She upholds Kyle's moral character by highlighting his commitment to the family and his attempts to put past grievances behind him. Victor, ever the obstinate father, doubles down on his critiques and rejects her reasoning. Claire reaches her breaking point, fed up with his inability to see reason, and declares that she will not tolerate Victor's toxic attitude if he cannot respect Kyle. She then abruptly leaves, shocking Victor and indicating a significant change in allegiances. Not only is Kyle at issue in this exchange, but Claire is also demonstrating her independence and refusing to allow Victor to steer the conversation. Her audacious move might have far-reaching effects, such as causing her to become estranged from the Newman family or encouraging others to rebel against Victor's controlling behavior. In the meantime, Kyle might find himself reconsidering his own role in the family conflict after being moved by Claire's ferocious support of him. One thing is evident as Claire leaves: she is tired of remaining silent. Will this confrontation merely widen the gap, or will Victor finally consider how harshly he treated Kyle? As the aftermath from Claire's defiance develops, Genoa's city will see even more drama as emotions run high and loyalties are put to the test. Claire had never felt so confined, embarrassed, and enraged as she did that night at the Newman ranch. Instead of glimmering with their customary warmth, the opulent chandeliers overhead appeared to mock her, casting harsh shadows over the tense atmosphere. Sitting in his high-back leather chair, her grandfather Victor Newman, who was strong and feared, dominated the conversation as usual, his voice cutting through the room with the same coldness she had once taken for strength. He was in the middle of one of his unrelenting outbursts, attacking Kyle Abbott once more with remarks full of arrogance and contempt. In an attempt to defuse the situation and convince her grandfather that Kyle was a person and not only a target for Newman's ire, Claire had initially tried to maintain her cool by gently interrupting with counterarguments. However, unflinching and unyielding, Victor continued to crush every effort, rejecting Kyle as weak, unreliable, and a burden on the family. He even went so far as to draw a connection between Kyle and Ashland Locke, which Claire knew was hurtful and incredibly unfair. Claire sat rigidly on the edge of the couch, her heart racing, her fists clasped in her lap. More than enough had been said to her. Her grandfather had manipulated everyone around him, turning them into pawns on his enormous power chessboard, but today he went too far. Even though the man she loved was flawed, Kyle had been there for her through trauma, chaos, and the harsh spotlight of the Newman limelight. Victor was now methodically discrediting him, disparaging him as a man, a parent, and a human being in addition to being a business associate. Claire became enraged when Victor said the boy couldn't lead a lemonade stand, let alone a company. Her nails dug into her palms, her jaw tensed, and she breathed quickly and shallowly. The heat behind her eyes caused a small blurring of the room. Her chair scraped the wooden floor as she slowly and methodically stood up. Compared to a scream, the sound was more successful at silencing the room. Victor halted and narrowed his piercing eyes at her, obviously unprepared for the quiet protest. When Claire finally spoke, her voice shook with controlled rage. "Enough," she murmured in a quiet but firm voice. Victor raised an eyebrow, obviously amused, and said, "Just stop." This infuriated her even more. "Claire," he continued patronizingly, "don't allow your feelings influence your decisions." The last straw for her was that she was still young and still figuring out who was worthy of her allegiance. She raised her voice and yelled, "Don't treat me like some naive little girl." Victor leaned back, his face unreadable but still radiating that patronizing calm that made her feel like a toddler having a fit. "I am not a pawn, and I'm not going to sit here and let you rip apart someone I care about just because he doesn't grovel at your feet." However, Claire had had enough of being made to feel insignificant in the Newman Empire's shadow. She went on to say, "Kyle isn't perfect, but he's good and loyal and he's trying." Nikki, who had been silent and anxious throughout the entire conversation, muttered Claire's name in warning, but Claire shook her head, her eyes burning. "More than I can say for some people in this family who destroy everything they touch and call it strategy. No, Grandma, I must express this. Because I will never be able to forgive myself if I don't." She turned to Victor. "You are so consumed with control and power that you aren't even aware of the harm you are causing. You claim to love me, but you only stand by me when I comply. You shut me down when I ask you questions, or worse, you use it as an opportunity to teach me about family loyalty. However, this isn't loyalty. Fear is the cause." Additionally, Victor's expression changed from one of indifference to one of icy coldness. "Are you done?" His voice was low and menacing as he requested. Claire's throat constricted, but she refused to back down. "Indeed. And I'm done." The ensuing quiet was oppressive. Behind her, you could hear the grandfather clock ticking softly and the distant wind rustling the windows. With shaking hands, Claire snatched her bag from the table, her motions jerky and adrenaline-fueled. Victor remained still, not even blinking. Claire didn't wait for Nikki, who stood as though she may follow her. She had to breathe. She required room. She had to leave the Newman Ranch, the gilded cage that had become her existence. She slammed the door behind her with a fury that reverberated down the long halls as she stormed out into the darkness. She waved him away as the outside chauffeur leaped to attention. She didn't want anyone to follow her or give her a ride. To feel the night air on her skin and to convince herself that she still had power over at least one aspect of her life, she simply wanted to go for a stroll. Her breaths became irate huffs as she made her way down the drive, her boots crunching on the gravel. She reflected on the numerous occasions she had attempted to win Victor's favor, the concessions she had made, and the realities she had accepted. For what purpose? So he could mindlessly destroy someone who held significance for her? Not anymore. She refused to contribute to that poisonous tradition. She ignored the buzzing sound coming from her phone in her coat pocket. She couldn't speak, but she knew it was either Nikki, Summer, or possibly Kyle, who might have heard about the altercation by now. Not quite yet. Her thoughts were too loud. In her mind, she kept seeing images of Victor's icy gaze, Kyle's patient yet hurt looks from their final meal together, and Claire's own voice breaking bitterly. When she eventually arrived at the edge of the property, away from the mansion's glaring lights, she leaned against the fence post and let the tears fall before she could stop them. She was crying, but not because she felt bad about what she had said. She knew what that meant, and she was crying because she meant every word. She was cutting herself apart from Victor, from her ancestry itself. However, she had to. Because she would lose herself if she didn't. Furthermore, Kyle deserved someone who would defend him rather than remain mute while the individuals in her life used their power as a weapon to destroy him. She eventually pulled out her phone and texted him, "I left the ranch after a long time. I was forced to." After a few minutes, the response finally arrived, and it was straightforward, "I'm proud of you." That was all she needed. "I couldn't let him talk about you like that." Through her sadness, there was a glimmer of warmth. With her movements more steady now, she pocketed her phone and headed back into town. There would be repercussions. Victor Newman was usually with them. Out of spite, he might strike back, try to woo her back, or even more aggressively disparage Kyle. She didn't care, though. It was the first time she had drawn a line of her own. Not Victor's. Not her relatives. Hers. And that cannot be undone by wealth, legacy, or coercion.